as I've said in my last review, and I think the review before that one when the gauntlet match for Ohma started, this is going to get more and more difficult for Ohma, and over time as more people slot in, learn new things from the previous fighters, Ohma's gonna start having a tougher time, they're gonna start gaining more of an advantage, and I think this might be the beginning of the turning point. And I say might because there is a moment where Ohma seems like he's still in control. But hey, this is Kureishi's first real showcase in the Kengan Omega manga, so I think Sandro will probably, do him some justice. And yes, you heard me right. I'm just gonna spoil it early. And with that, let's actually start off with the chapter that is called Fox. And we start off basically in the Kure Clan's base of operations, where they chill for the most part. And that means we're getting more of course, Koga and Ryuki and what they're gonna do. Now, personally, I'm very interested in this, especially to see how it goes for them. But yeah, they're having a conversation with Hollis. And Hollis, he's basically confirming like, okay, yeah, we'll help you out. We'll do this training with you. Same thing Foisui was saying. And they're basically explaining themselves like, look, we can't even send people to Kengan matches right now. But hey, look, we have the same enemy, the connector, right? So we can afford to train you up, okay? However, their resources are actually stretched thin because of the Westwood faction, basically. And this is where I'll talk a little bit about what happened in the last chapter where it says we lost some people to the connector. Now, this is kinda brought back up again by Hollis, because he says they've been burned by the connector. And again, my personal opinion, I think saying people got killed by Shen Wulong is a mistranslation. I never saw anyone get killed by the connector. They got knocked out. However, that's not true when it comes to what is happening with the Westwood faction. And they are technically, part of the same group with the connector, and we know there's been bloodshed over that entire war. It is the bloodiest feud in the entire series. Maybe we could stretch it to include the Westwood faction, what's going on with them, but focusing back on this chapter, Koga and Ryuki's training is really quite simple. 24 hours against the best martial artists the Kure Clan can provide that are going to try to quote-unquote assassinate them. Now I say quote-unquote because Karura, while Ryuki is still asking whether or not the training actually starts now, probably because he could literally sense Karura coming, Karura tries to do a sneak attack while they're still talking about the training. And so that confirms like, hey, look, this starts now. And if you go unconscious for any reason for these 24 hours, it's over, you failed. And hey, if you last 24 hours, you're getting something, I guess. But Harlos also confirms that, hey, the katana, especially the one that Karura used and probably every best martial artist, including Harlos himself, is using because he's also gearing up, are blunt. Now he does say, hey look, these can break bones even though they're blunt, but hey, this isn't deadly training here. But given that it is the Kure Clan, they're probably not going to be pulling that much punches. Really, I think it's killing them that will be probably off the table. But either way, that's the beginning of their entire training situation. And once that scene is over, we then transition over to, of course, Ohma's gauntlet run. And just like with Toa, we have, that passage of time while we were focused on Koga and Ryuki. We see Ludong, he's sort of trying to attack Ohma here. He's sort of screaming out, throwing a right hand punch at him. But he completely fails at this because Ohma outranges him with a kick with his right leg while leaning back. And with that, that's the time. Kureishi calls the time and Ludong, he backs out. He's like, look, Tuko, you better watch out against this one. It was rough in there. And he even says at one point, he didn't let me move the way I wanted to. And we know this is of course what principles can do. Not only is it a buff, it is an active debuff if you can use it properly. We saw this with Ryan and William. William is one of the strongest characters in the series, physically at least. But Ryan could nerf his strength by nerfing his, movements at certain areas. But yeah, Ludong is like, listen, that ain't the old Ohma. That's a different beast. He calls him, a beast. That's the words of Ludong. And with that, we see Ohma's taking his short period of a break. And he's like, okay, kinda halfway through, right? Who's next? Who's ready to catch these hands? And this is where it takes a surprising turn. Not so surprising if you remember what I said at the beginning of the video, because the next person to enter is Kureishi. I did not expect this. I expected him to actually be the last person to jump in the fight. In fact, as Kureishi is stepping in, he's stretching, getting himself prepared. Almost like, yeah, I kinda expected you to come in towards the end, because Kureishi at no point expressed that he was here to fight. He made it seem like, even though I didn't believe him, Ohma didn't believe him, he made it seem like, oh, I'm just here to help. But Kureishi says, hey, I'm going to leave the final round to Joji. So Joji, at least from what Kureishi is saying, he is the final boss of this first gauntlet run. And this kind of makes sense to a certain extent, mainly because I think Joji, thanks to his, special eye, was able to see what Ohma is doing. He'll be able to gather the most amount of intel on what Ohma is doing, and if he does actually end up coming up last, he'll be able to use it to his advantage, right? He will probably be the best performer if this happens. So yeah, Joji potentially is the final boss. But Ohma, after, Kureishi says that, he actually expresses that, hey, look, he's been wanting to, to fight Kureishi for a while, because he's always felt this sense of danger from Kureishi. And this is where Kureishi, now, Kureishi is someone who really likes to downplay himself and his intentions. That's clear from the moment this gauntlet run thing started, where he said, oh no, he's just here to help. And he starts doing the same thing here. It's like, danger? Now listen, I'm just your average nice guy. When you think of a nice guy, you think of someone who has the epithet called the freak. That's what you think of course. And we see there's a lot of tension in the air as he's trying to play this, oh, I'm actually a nice guy thing. And Toku's like, alright, look, I'm gonna do the countdown now. And he does it, and the fight is supposed to happen at this point. And Ohma starts thinking, hey look, he's got a bigger build than Kureishi. Sure, he might have an advantage in that scenario, but he is at a huge disadvantage here, because unlike with Toa, with Liu, with Toku, he's not at an advantage insofar as knowledge goes. He doesn't know what exactly Kureishi is gonna pull out. We know from the title card in his introduction, MMA, right? He does MMA. He literally taught the King of Stranglers, so you expect some grappling to be there as well. But again, no guarantees to what his fighting style would be unless you've read Fist of the Seeker. But Ohma, he makes a logical deduction. He's like, look, if he's Cosmo's master, he's probably powerful, so I should be on my toes. And at this point, we see an interesting effect where it seems like, don't know how many of you people have actually read or watched Hunter x Hunter, but it looks like Rhythm Echo from what Killua uses, or the Zoldyck family technique, where basically it seems like there's after images while Kureishi is, taking a low stance, sort of trying to go after him, right? And it looks like, at least to me, kind of looks like he's gonna go for a grapple, but once he gets close enough to Ohma, he goes even lower, seeming like he's going, to grab Ohma's leg. He's maybe gonna go for a tackle here, and Ohma, he's surprised, and so am I really, because he doesn't actually go for that type of grab. He instead goes for a strike. So in his low stance, he's sort of doing a left hook towards Ohma's face. And Ohma, of course, he ends up blocking with his right hand. But it turns out that this is like a triple fake, because what looked like a grapple but was really a strike was really a grapple, because from that position of Ohma blocking, Kureishi grabs his hand, and you have Kureishi being like, yeah, you didn't see that one coming now, did you? And yeah, it was a fake, stack on top of a feint, stand on another feint. So yeah, considering Ohma doesn't even know what type of fighting style you have, you know, this was probably gonna work. And so, you might have to help me out with what type of grapple this is, where he sort of grabs his hand, stretches it out, and is trying to break Ohma's right hand. You know, he sort of has it locked in position. And Ohma is in a pretty bad position because things could go wrong. If he loses his hand in this sparring match, that does not bode well for him. And Liu, he's like, oh yeah, Kureishi has got an arm lock on this man. And Toa is like, oh yeah, Kureishi, he's pretty good. But we then see Ohma activate the Nico style indestructible. Now my guess for what is happening here is that he's trying to stop Kureishi from progressing any further with his grapple to break his arm. He's making it harder for Kureishi to do that. And so, there is a lot more resistance. But you can tell Ohma is like, oh yeah, you got me, okay? You're an old fox, which is actually the name of the chapter. So, this is Kureishi, right? He's got him in this arm lock. He has a chance to break his arm right here, right now, and that would forever change the dynamics of this fight. Pretty cool on him. I think the move that he pulled was very impressive in terms of a strategy to just go in and do as much damage to Ohma just right off the gate. But I wonder if you'll be able to actually do something like that, because yeah, he caught Ohma off guard, but he hasn't, at least so far, there's no indication that he's actually done anything, you know, too substantial here. And so there's a chance that Ohma could just bounce back from this. He might have, you know, Kureishi's number from this point on. But yeah, that was the actual chapter. Do like the part with Kureishi versus Ohma, or at least that brief exchange that we got. Kureishi, again, can't really, well, I can. I think it was a brilliant play on Kureishi's part. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on the chapter. Don't forget to like and sub, and until next time, take it easy.